Live from the Cactus Creek at Ibri, he is the king of prime time, Ghana's undisputed entertainment laureate, and still the youngest old man in Ghana. Put your hands together, show some love for the indefatigable KSM.
The KSM Show.
We're back. I promise you, sir, we are going to be right back because we had to continue the conversation. Obadele, one more time. There you go. Yeah. We're going to take a commercial break. And as we said last week, we're talking about the past. We're going to take a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to look at today. No. How far have we come? Stick around, folks. We'll be right back.
Is it the luxurious rooms? Or the serene green surroundings? Is it the tempting swimming pool? Or the classy conference room? Or the cute gift shop? Maybe it's our chef's array of cooking delights. Whichever way, it's all about Cactus Creek. A most respected hotel. 055 039 5007.
KSM Show.
Thank you. We're back. Last week, I got so engrossed in the story, I forgot to ask my guest a little bit of something about himself. Don't worry, we're going to get back into the story deeper than last week. But in the meantime, over there, tell me a little bit about yourself. You were born in the U.S., right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
So, I was born in the United States. I prefer to call it the United States of a murderer.
Hold on. You prefer to call it what?
The United Snakes of a Murderer. Yeah.
United Snakes of a Murderer.
Exactly. And I was born in a small town called Brooklyn, New York.
Hey!
Yeah.
Really?
Exactly. That was in 1979. And my parents realized that, at that time, Ronald Reagan was coming in.
Mm-hmm.
They were doing a lot to bring in drugs and guns and other things. So my father was born and raised in Brooklyn, but he realized that the neighborhood community type of Brooklyn he grew up in was changing. They had crack coming in, guns coming in, and all these other things. So both my parents decided to move from New York down to North Carolina. Now the overall plan was that they were going to move to North Carolina, which is where my mother's side of the family was enslaved, and then move to the Caribbean, which is where my father's side of the family came from, and then eventually come here to the continent. So with me repatriating and then bringing both my parents to live with me, it was actually coming full circle of that original plan that they had.
I see.
Yeah.
When did you repatriate?
I repatriated permanently in 2008, but between 98, which was my first time coming to Ghana, and 2008, I traveled, to various countries. I had been to Ghana several times, to Nigeria, where I studied advanced Yoruba, to Senegal and the Gambia for Wolof, to Burkina Faso, to Mali, just various
Wow, wow,
countries,
wow.
especially
And
for the language.
You do speak a lot of languages there.
Yes, I do.
Menka ka utwi na atwifo no se utitwi nso. Utitwi nso. Nti language ahina wasua African language ahina.
Se me kan a ebebro if I say aduanan.
Aduanan.
De metri kan baako na so de me ka pa no if I say be say nson.
Wow. You know kapa.
Nti twi na me ka pa Yoruba and also na me kire.
No che Yoruba.
Me kire Yoruba, me kire twi awo Legon Suapon. Me kire Yoruba, me san kire Wolof kasa. Ya kasa kesi a amka wo Senegal and Gambia. Amesanka Kiswahili. Ansana ki Congo.
So la me kan twi no. Mo che mo do.
Ya fe de me twi kan kakran kakra ye fa say Amarinya ya kasa kesi amka wo Ethiopia. Say ebia me ko Ethiopia for the bia metumi kan bibia wa Amarinya hia say me kan brofo.
Wow.
Me metumi kan kasa bi to say Kimbundo kakra, isi Zulu kakra, isi Xhosa kakra, Oshiwambo kakra mokawo Namibia, so me upa so waka medasia Napandula, actually say me bon sa mama. Bamanakan amokawo Malim and also Mesmika kakra, eniche mba Ibo kakra and also say me pesimeka Daluso Imela. Enti kaka hodo.
That's a true Pan-African. Wow. Those of you who don't understand Twi, I'm sorry, said so much about all the languages he speaks, and it's just amazing. Now, how did you learn of this? How did you learn like Twi? Did you read books to understand Twi, or just listening? All these languages, how are you learning them?
Yeah, so I actually studied them formally. So my PhD is in linguistics. But you have people who are linguists who only know one language. They only work on their own mother tongue, and that's it. Some of my colleagues at UG, they say that I'm a linguist, because I'm not only doing my mother tongue, but I'm doing various other languages as well. So yeah, I actually studied them formally at the university. So for Twi, when I first came in 98, my mother brought me, and I stayed for 2 weeks, 99 for 2 weeks, but between that time I had a set of tapes that my mother had gotten, and I was listening to it and trying, when I came here, I started trying to converse. From 2000 to 2001, I spent a year of study abroad. My first teacher was Openia Jikum, who some people may know. And we just read Anansi stories, because it says you already know the language. For yours, it's just, pronunciation of trying to say it well. Because, if you read from a book, you won't get it perfectly. But then by the next semester, I was taking a course on religion, entirely taught in Twi, tested in Twi. All the essays were written in Twi, use of a Ghanaian language, literature of a Ghanaian language. So I was reading poetry, I was reading plays written in Twi for Twi speakers. So I'm the only one who's not born in Ghana in that class, but I'm writing essays. And by the end of that semester, that was the longest paper I had written in any language. It was 41 pages about proverbs and various social contexts, written entirely in Twi, not a drop of Amorafo inside. And what I found, one of my challenges was when I actually came to live, I realized that people don't speak Twi, people speak Chinglish. So you have to know the words that people don't know in Twi that they're going to replace with English. And it was very difficult for me to hear, because I'm like, that wasn't in my dictionary, that wasn't in my book. They say, Wobejaji. They're saying all these things. I'm like, what judge? I'm trying to picture G-Y. So, that's not, standard Twi. And then, people speak Chinglish, Ewe-English, Ganglish, and all of these other things. And it's because they don't actually know their own language. But then you come to find out that they also don't know the language of the enemies either, because just a few years ago there was an example, Prof, I would say Obimfua Jena Poku Ajime. She made this thing, this pronouncement saying that we should use indigenous languages to teach, at all these levels in public schools. People say, oh, how can you do that? How can you say proton in Twi? And what that told me is that people don't know English, because proton just means first. If you look at the Greek origin, proton, it literally just means the word first. Are you telling me you don't have a word for first? You understand? And, it's just because we think that these are like magical terms. If you say electron, people say, how can you say electron? Electron just comes from the word electrum, you understand, which is the alloy of gold. If you go into hydrogen, it literally comes from hydro, which means water, and then gen, which means to generate, right? So that which generates water. if you say oxygen, the oxy is coming from the word for acid, and then gen to generate.
Wow.
If you say helium, it's just the word for the sun in Greek. Don't you have a word for the sun in your own language? Lithium is just the word for stone. Lithos just means stone. And it told me that they don't know their own language well enough to conceptualize reality to describe what this thing is, nor do they know the English or the Latin or the Greek. So it's like, where are we? We're like ampine. We're not fully a bird, and we're not fully a mammal. So what's really going on? Are we an animal or are we a bird? So yeah, that's just some of what we're doing.
Wow. Show some love, man. That's fantastic. So I know your mom is in the audience. Show some love, man. So your mom and dad are here, or just your mom?
So my father passed away recently, this past December, quite unfortunately. My mother is here. They had been living here since 2021.
Oh, he was in Ghana?
Yes. So we were all living together. So the idea was for us to all be in a family house. So I'll show you, you can show pictures of the family house, because it's constructed on architecture of black people. So we use the creation stories of various black people, including Dogon creation story from Kemet, from the Basonye, from all these different people, in order to construct the architecture. So it has 8 sides. It's really a monumental structure. So we'll show you some images of that so that people can get a sense of where they were. But yeah, so we were all here living as one happy family. I have 5 children. My wife is here, of course. So
Wow. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so thank you so much for the history. It's lots of education, and even the kinds of comments we're getting on YouTube tells us that there's a depth of knowledge that unfortunately has been missed through our educational system.
Or miseducational system, as the case may be.
The miseducation. Because I remember it's now getting a little better. In Christmas time, you go to churches and you see Africans, some who have never traveled, talking about in the bleak midwinter, snow had falling snow, and you can tell that Bibinya correct. So now let's come to the modern Africa. Because now we are not dealing with colonialism, we are dealing with neo-colonialism, where our thinking is still warped, because the legacy that we have inherited is still very, very much a colonial legacy. What kills me personally, when I see our lawyers wearing those wigs, the blonde wigs that the British used to wear, and wear them proudly in Ghanaian law courts, plus many other things. That's just a very... What's your assessment from where you are now, the neo-colonialism that you're dealing with? How do you see everything?
Yeah, so this is a good question. And as I mentioned, we actually put together a conference to deal with some of these issues. So we call it the Abibitumi Conference on Black Power.
Abibitumi Conference on Black Power.
Right. So Abibitumi is, of course, Chi for Black Power.
Black Power,
right?
Okay.
So we had the first historic conference in 2023, where my father, Nana Kamal Kamban, was the first keynote speaker. We have the second one that's coming up, this year from September 6th to the 8th. So for those who are interested, you can go to conference.abibitumi.com. And we also have the app available as well, Abibitumi app. So if you just do a search for ABIBITUMI, then that'll pull up the app as well.
Abibitumi.com?
Right. So abibitumi.com, so you can get into the browser
right now.
and also for the app. Now, the purpose of that is that most times we're dependent on our enemies to even communicate amongst each other. So whether that's on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, but Abibitumi is a social education platform where entirely independent. There's no Facebook jail for Master Mark Zuckerberg to put you in, because this is black people running our own affairs. So, for those who are interested, they can download the app. They can chat with black people who are located on the continent, all throughout the continent, and those outside as well. We have members from Kenya, from Cote d'Ivoire, from Zimbabwe. We have black people who are located in Italy and Belgium and the US.
And they're all on the platform.
All on the platform.
Abibitumi.com on your screens right now, folks.
Right. So it's a membership site. So we have 12,000 members and counting. And we had our first conference for all of those members to be able to come together and convene here at Abibitumi headquarters, which is there in Equapim Mampong. You're invited. I would definitely love to have you come
Please
to
remind me.
Habibi to
And
Me headquarters.
we also put out the word out on this show to remind people and to promote the occasion.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So these are some of the things. Now, when we talk about the Habibi to Me conference, you know, we started off with black people talk too much but don't do enough. Now, Habibi to Me conference is all about action. It's about what we're doing. So if you see the type of car I drive a Kantanka. Now, why do I do that? It's not that all the parts are made here. It's rather that we need to support our own so that, you know, we can build the capacity so that we can do all the parts here.
So you drive a Kantanka?
I drive a Kantanka.
Wow.
So I have a black Kantanka that has what they call the Pan-African flag on it, the red, black, and green flag. Now, because people don't know what the Pan-African flag is, most people think it's NDC. They say, Ejo. I say, no, you have no idea what you're seeing. Or Biafra. They think it's Biafra. I say, no, you're still missing. No, you don't. If you look at the types of phones, I actually have 2 phones. These are Mara phones that are made in Rwanda. Why is
These are
that?
made in Rwanda.
Rwanda, right? Now, why is that? Because I think that we should actually be about what we say that we're about. So if you see here, it says very clearly made in Rwanda,
Really?
right there. And I actually have 2 of those, you know, phones. If you look at the type of clothes that I wear, this isn't because I'm on, you know, TV or whatever that I'm going to wear clothes made by black people. I made a decision when I was 19 years old that every day of my life I'm going to wear clothes exclusively made by black people. So even, excuse me to say, my drawers are made by black people. I remember one time I was at Abosoka, this is the other phone, also made in Rwanda. I was at Abosoka and there was someone who was saying, oh, here are some Obroni Wawu drawers. And I couldn't even imagine that someone would wear the used drawers of a, you know, syphilitic, old, nasty, you know, white man or woman. But this is what they're proudly selling at Abosoka.
Yeah.
And I say, look at all the tailors and seamstresses. This is a lack of a mentality, because if you have cloth and if you have a tailor or a seamstress, there's no reason why any black person on the entire planet Earth should ever buy any drawers from any white person. So I don't know if I need to show, but this is actually my Ghana-made drawers that I can pull out for you right here. So this is the fabric here, right? Now, why are we doing that? Because we're supposed to be about what we say that they were about. If you see my staff, this is a Nyami staff, and it comes from the people of Zimbabwe, and it represents the spirit of the river there, the Zambezi River there. If you see, this bag is coming from black people in Brazil. This is a Pan-African outfit. So the cloth here came from Nigeria, from Ibadan, but then it was sewn in Ghana. So everything about my outfit is Pan-African. Then I'm wearing ahinema as well. So it's all throughout the entire continent. Why? Because we should actually be about what we say that we're about. Why should we wear, you know, I think about any time we request for aid, I think about the billions that we send out so that we can look modern, so we can wear, you know, whoever, Tommy Hilfiger or Ralph Lauren or any of these people, and literally we're giving them money because the money that we give them so we can look modern is what they're using to pave their roads. That's what they're using to build skyscrapers. And literally we're going to beg for $1 million and say, oh, they gave us $1 million loan to build roads. But we gave them $1 billion freely that we could have internally circulated by wearing just our own clothes. That's just one area. Let's look at, you know, rather than drinking pito or drinking insefu, the palm wine, now we want to have schnapps. Anytime you need to go see the Ohene, you need to bring 2 bottles of schnapps. Now, look at the Dutch infrastructure that came from hundreds of years of schnapps. You understand? Look at the infrastructure that's going to those who are manufacturing the whiskey and the rum and so forth. Imagine just the money we gave just for the liquor alone, what that would have done here. There would never be a dirt road here that's unpaved in the entire Ghana from the southern all the way up to Narongo, Bogatanga. Can you imagine?
Wow. Yeah.
But again, that comes from the mentality, because if people can tell you that your own thing is not good, now your own thing is actually good for the gut microbiome. If you're looking at these fermented drinks like the pito, like the insefu, the palm wine, it's actually good for you. Meanwhile, the thing that they're selling you is going to damage your kidney, it's going to damage your liver, it's going to cause brain issues later on in life. Now you've replaced something that brought about life with something that brings about death. The exact same thing we used to use shire. So this is the white clay. This has adsorbent properties to the point that you have toucans and macaws in the Congo that can eat berries that are poisonous. They go to the riverside, they eat this white clay, and they're able to go along with their lives with no problem whatsoever. But we've replaced that with baby powder. You understand? Now, this is something that Johnson & Johnson just had to pay something like $1.2 billion for cancer, because everyone in the U.S. knows that that baby powder that we love so well here in Ghana causes cancer, to the point that they can't even sell it, but they're not going to shut down the factory.
Yeah.
They're going to send it here to the continent because they know that we don't know any better, and we think anything that comes from our colonial enemies is something that must be good, even though it causes cancer and it kills people. You understand? You could look at something that we used to use, eshe, that's the frankincense, and we replace that with, oh, this or both one wants a cigar, this one wants a cigarette, or this one wants it. So something that used to bring smoke that brings about life is replaced with smoke that brings about death, lung cancer, and so forth and so on. So we can look at it across the board. I mentioned the Kantanka. I actually did a study on the leader of every free country drives something that comes from their own country. So if you look at Japan, the empress there drives a Toyota Century. If you look at China, the heads of state there drive a Hongqi, which is a brand that's not even available here in Ghana. If you look at the United States, they have the Cadillacs that they drive there. If you look at Germany, they're going to drive Mercedes-Benz. If you look at France, they're going to drive Peugeot. If you look at Italy, they're going to drive a Lancia. If you look at the UKKK, they're going to drive Bentleys. No one cares what's the best car. They care what car is manufactured by my own people. Meanwhile, here we're going to say, oh, when I finally did for a seat, let me ride in Toyota Small. I actually had a colleague at the University of Ghana who said, oh, let me ride in the Land Cruiser Small. Now, at one point in time, Toyota, if you drove a Toyota, you are a laughing stock.
Yeah.
This was seen as a box, like a coffin.
Yeah.
It's a portable coffin. This is in the late 1960s,
Yeah.
early 70s. Because Toyota actually started off as a loom company for weaving, but then they decided, oh, let's try to get into automobiles. But meanwhile, now we've put so much money into Toyota that now they can have 50 different types of Land Cruisers, and then they're going to sell them all to mind-numbed continental Africans who don't know any better, but to send all of their money to Japan. And then we look at and we say, wow, one day we can get infrastructure like Japan. They say they got all the infrastructure from you. Literally. But this is what's going on. So when it comes down to some of the things that we can do practically, that's what the Abibi to Me conference on Black Power is all about, because we have people who are dealing with 3D printing, black people who are dealing with 3D printing, those who are building block making machines, so that we can actually be nation building literally, not just giving talk shops and so forth and so on. So basically the idea is that whatever we say, it should be backed up with action. There should be a behavioral correlate. That's a very fancy way of saying that what we say that we're about, we should actually be about what we say that we're about through what we, how we dress. In my household, every day of the week we have classes, so I homeschool my children. So on Monday, I teach them Chi, not just Chi as a language, but Chi as a medium of instruction. So they're learning astronomy in Chi. So they know the names of the different planets in Chi. They know the names of constellations in Chi. So if you know Wumami Niwadye, that's Mercury in Chi. How many of our listeners who are native-born Ghanaians will know that? But my children will know that. They'll know Cheche. They'll know Obindasum, which is the name for Jupiter. They'll know the names of all of these. They'll know Abrewan and Ma, which is the Pleiades. So they're not only learning the language, but they're learning the language as a medium of instruction to know about everything else in the world, about the skeletal system, the musculatory system, and so forth and so on, and I can go on. On Tuesday, they learn Yoruba, and then they also learn in Yoruba as a medium of instruction. On Wednesday, I teach them Wolof, and then I also teach them in Wolof. On Thursday, I teach them Medu Necha. That's the writing system, the very first writing system on the planet, which, I mentioned. If you want to know anything about it, you can learn it, but again, more of our history is locked up in that language than in any other language that you can imagine. 3,000 years of history compared to everything else that came after, which is only the last 2,000 years. And then on Fridays, we rotate between Kiswahili and Kikongo. So this is actually being about what I said I'm about. And for me, I've never spoken to any of my children in any non-black language. So I've only spoken to them in Twi. Our household languages tend to be Twi and Yoruba. My wife speaks Yoruba. Now, why are we doing this? Because one time I was at a conference, and it's a conference of language teachers, quote unquote African language teachers. And I asked the question, I said, how many of you teach your own children in your own language? Not a single hand went up. At a conference of specialists, linguists, language teachers, all of them, and they're advocating, yes, we have to have our mother tongues, and we need to, speaking, all bombastically about what we need to do. But I'm asking, no, don't say we. There's a moratorium on we. You're no longer allowed to say we. Say, I do this. now your hand can't go up anymore because no longer is it abstract. This is what I actually do on a daily basis. So these are just some of the things, and I can go on and on. But you know, from our architecture to our clothing, all of these things.
Just leading you to the next question, because there have been calls that we should teach in a local language.
Yeah.
So let's take Ghana, and we decide to adopt a local language to teach in. That's where people think there could be, is it going to be a Ghana thing, or is it going to be a Akan because majority is Akan, or is it going to be then from the north? What's your advice if we're supposed to concentrate on developing one language that all Ghanaians should use? Should there be something like that? And if they should, what would it be?
So this is part of the issue of what my father used to refer to as psychological lockdown. Who told us that it has to be one language? Now, I grew up in the U.S. and for years the only language was English that you would learn. But you know, now if you even dial on the phone, it says English or Spanish.
Yeah.
So even in this monolingual country, they have multiple language options for you to learn, much less here on the continent. Who told us that we have to have an L1? That's what they call the first language. And then after you learn your L1, now you can learn an L2. You have children in Nima who are learning 5 languages at the exact same time. So they know Ga, they know Chi, they know Hausa. They're learning all of these languages at the same time. And this is really our context. So I think that, you know, basically on the basis of our context, we can see how they can be enriched multiply by learning various languages at the same time, because not only do they have the capacity, it actually does a lot in terms of cognitive development, in terms of brain development, in terms of what they're able to conceptualize, in terms of, you know, just ideas that they're able to come up with, because in certain languages there's a way to express something that it may not be in another language. You understand? So just like how I was talking about the Songhai language, anytime they say bibi, they mean something positive. Well, now if you come to people here who have been influenced by miseducation, anytime they hear something black, they think it's negative. Well, who taught them that? If you know that the ancestral language, which is Ghana, Mali, Songhai, as they call it, that the Songhai language, they still have the exact same word, bibi, that you still have in the Akan language, but there is positive. Well, who must have told you that everything black is negative? Again, it comes from the brutish, you know, colonial enemies who set up the miseducational system in the first place, which is why, you know, you have people who talking about whose sheep is white as snow and all types of ridiculous things. You know, A is for apple, and they don't even know what an apple is. You understand? This is what's going on. And again, I don't want us to say it like, oh, we are the cause of our problem. The ones who benefit from the problems are the ones who created those problems in the first place, because who's going to sell you the apple?
I guess the problem for me is that how long will it take us to realize that the one who creates the problem that we are basking in are benefiting from the problem?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they are benefiting from it. You know, we talk about, let's go Ghana beyond aid. As we sit on the plane to go to Paris to beg for money.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so every time I meet guests like you, I want to, where is the starting point? How do we change that? Can we turn this around? And how? In the next just 4 minutes left.
Yeah, so the starting point is for each of us to put a moratorium on how do we do this and how do we do that, and say, what am I doing in my daily life on a day-to-day basis? How am I teaching my children? Like, let's just start there. Because if you teach your children correctly and I teach my children correctly, won't everyone's child eventually get some type of actual education? How are you going to get free when you have to exalt the culture of your enemies? And there's a quote by Nana Yosef Ben Yakane. He says, religion is a deification of a culture. Now imagine you have a culture where they don't have any water. They live in the desert. So all they can do is get a little bit of water and then they rub it on their fingers and their face and their toes, and that's all they can do. Meanwhile, you live in a place where there's a creek filled with water. You can go hop in any river, any lake, but you have to deify their culture and pretend like if I was an Arab in a desert, then I would behave like an Arab. They've told you that their culture is sacred. Not having any water is now sacred, even though you're surrounded by water. What type of enslavement is that mentally? You understand? You're following behind again an illiterate camel boy. This is exactly what's going on here. So again, it starts one with no longer praying to imaginary white people. So for me, I don't even pray to real white people, much less will I pray to an imaginary white boy on a stick or Bruni Chinchinga. That we have to, you know, go to some of these things, but then also to understand that all of these things that we've talked about and we've identified as the problem, None of those are the problem. Those are the spider web. But we have to go to, well, where is the spider who wove that web? Religion isn't the spider. Religion is the spider web. But who gave us this religion where we're praying to imaginary white people? The miseducation system isn't the spider. That's the spider web. You know, if we talk about the health and the liquor and all these things we're talking about, the baby powder, everything that causes anything we talk about, none of those are the problem. Everything that we think is the problem, the number one problem on the planet Earth, was created by the number one problem on the planet Earth. And that means we have to correctly identify who our enemies are. Any non-black person, we need to look at that person as this is an enemy. Right now we look at them as this is my development partner, this is my so forth and so on. But again, now once there's a let's say imbalance of power, now we have to go into, well, what can I do to do something about this spider? Well, one thing you can do is you can starve that spider to death by no longer giving them money for clothes, by no longer giving them money for cars, by no longer giving them money for liquor, by no longer giving them money for baby powder. All these things that we've been taught to love, these are the created tastes and desires. And once they put that taste and desire in you, it's almost like multiple personality syndrome, where the personality that's in you wants cigarettes, whether or not it causes lung cancer on the body that's hosting me. So again, these are just some of the things that we can do, is to look internally and say, when am I going to take responsibility, not just for what I'm doing, but take responsibility. And I've never met a Ghanaian who's willing to take responsibility to correctly identify their enemy and do something about the enemy. And the one thing you can do about your enemy is you can starve that enemy to death by no longer financing our oppression.
Put your hands together, man. Put your hands together. It's amazing. There's one thing, how much we fund our so-called development partners. You know what I'm saying? A partner, you're toe-to-toe with a partner. But not a partner that's dominating you and suppressing you. So well, that's my partner. But that's a different conversation for another time. For today, Obadele, thank you so much. It's been a very, very, very engaging encounter. And I'm going to get you back because there are so many doors you have opened that I think I want to get into to understand and to question, you know, so that we can debate it, you know. For my own, you know, education, there are certain things that you have said that are so important, but I want to know more about it. And me, as I know, I share with my audience, and then we all know and share together. So we'll be back again, but in the meantime, one more time for my guest here, show some love, Obadele. And KSM signing off. Until we meet again, all I can say is we are out of, let the whole Pan-African world say,
The KSM Show.